All right, I got Karen Salmansohn on the show today. She's a best-selling author and leading behavioral change expert. What makes her so unique, though, is the way she blends humor with psychology. Karen, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's so great to be here. I'm looking
Ex-
forward to this.
Excited. You're just a hilarious person too. I love your website, notsalmon.com, because I'm sure your last name has caused a lot of confusion.
Right.
And I just love the way that you're able to bring humor and funness to some like serious topics, right? And one of your big background, I know just from preparing for this interview, is you write a lot about happiness too. And now your latest book coming out, uh, talking about near life experiences, not near. We always hear the opposite, near death experiences. That's what changed my life. What started this? What gave you the impetus to write a book on near life experiences? I mean, what does
Yeah.
that even mean?
Well, if people don't know what it means, that's perfectly okay because I made the word up. It doesn't really exist. But what I mean by near life experiences is that a lot of people have them, even if they've never heard of the word. You're on your phone so much that you're missing out on what's the world around you. You're near life. You're not fully in your life. You're kind of like life adjacent. Or you're out with a loved one, but your mind is kind of like spinning about the future or regretting the past. So again, you're not fully in your present life, your near life adjacent, or else you're thinking about someday I'll do this, someday I'll do that. And so again, you're not fully entrenched in your life. And I realized I was having near life experiences after my dad died,
Mm,
and it kind of woke me up to the fact that I wasn't living as I was working hard and doing really well at my work, but I didn't have that balance. I was kind of in like beast mode, but that's when I realized then I write about this in the book, there's a difference between beast mode and best mode,
ooh,
you know. And I started writing notes in my phone like at 3 a.m. after he died, everything that was coming up for me. And I was realizing that mortality awareness, if used appropriately, if used well, doesn't have to be morbid. It can be motivating. Because mortality awareness creates urgency, and urgency creates action. It reminds you this death thing. It's an actual thing. It's amazing how we walk around. We kind of know in the back of our mind that we're going to die someday, but we have so many built-in defense mechanisms that we don't really let ourselves really know it, like truly know it. And so I'm helping people to know it, but gently with humor, so they can wake up, snap out of their near life experiences, and start living more boldly and meaningfully.
I love that idea about mortality awareness. You know, we hear it a lot from the Stoics, memento mori, right? Death is
Yeah.
coming. And I know one of the things that I had read about a long time ago. This was in Michael Easter's book, The Comfort Crisis, and he talks a lot about the people in Bhutan are like the happiest people in the world, right? And yet but their entire culture is surrounded by death, and actually they talk about it a lot. But here in the Western kind of culture, we don't talk about it at all. It's like, oh no, that's we're gonna have our cake at the funeral, and we're just gonna Aunt
Yeah.
Betty died, and let's just move on. And that really changed some of my perspective too. And it sounds like you're kind of talking about the same kind of idea, this mortality awareness. But I'll
Yeah.
tell you, Karen, I still have a difficulty as 43 years old. I still think, yeah, well, that's coming one day. And even I have a grips with dealing with mortality up front in my own life. And I've seen my mom go through some health challenges recently that really kind of struck me as well and made me start thinking the same way, I think, in what you're talking about. But really, how have you brought that into your life? How do you bring that idea of mortality awareness on a regular basis? Because I think it is key.
Yeah. Well, I deal with it with humor in the book. I talk about why I do believe, and have gentle ways to kind of poke at you to make you realize like we're here, then we're not. So we have to do what we can to make the here part as meaningful as possible. So one of the things that I did in the book that I recommend is that I recommend people write their eulogy.
Mm,
And it's funny, we write business mission statements. Well, a eulogy is sort of like a life mission statement. And I think it really helps on for so many reasons. But one of them is, you said you like the Stoics. Well, my favorite philosopher is Aristotle. And he said a bunch of things that show up in my book. One of them is you don't know if you've lived a good life until you're on your deathbed. And he also says you should begin every project with the ends in mind, everything from the small projects like a little bake sale to large projects like that gigantic project called your life. And then look at that project, beginning the ends in mind, and think, what is my end goal for this? He called it your telos. And Aristotle believed that no matter who we are, where we live, we all have the same end goal for our lives, whether you're from Timbuktu, Toledo, Toronto, and that is to learn lessons that help you to grow into your best possible self. And he said that the reason why he believed that so many people are unhappy is they have the wrong end goal for their lives. They think the end goal for your life is to become the richest person on the planet, to have the most podcast views on the planet, to,
Right.
sexiest girl on the planet, most sex on the planet. No, he said that if these are your goals, I don't think he mentioned podcasts, but I'm sure if he lived today, he would have. He said if you make these your end goals for your life, when you get to the end of your life, you're going to be mighty disappointed because you're going to realize you chased the wrong rabbits. So I talk about this in the book, and I help people to shape their eulogy so it's aimed at the right goals by giving them kind of a template for a eulogy, like Mad Libs, where you fill in the blanks. So it takes out some of the creepy crawlies and makes it kind of fun to write your eulogy. But it is. And then I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to give a little spoiler alert. You can still read the book knowing this, but I'm going to give you a little spoiler alert. A lot of these blanks have to do with core values.
Mm.
Because, as Aristotle said, the end goal of your life is to learn lessons that help you to grow into your best possible self. And part of the way to be your best possible self is to embrace strong core values. And then I help people figure out what they are, and a whole process, a whole little system to do this.
Wow. Okay, that's really interesting because that's so interesting. Your core values, I've always found too. It's like that's what is like your GPS. And if you don't know what your core values are, well, then when the waves come crashing down on you, the
Oh,
water is just going to take you wherever they want to take you. But if you know who you are, that's like the beacon. That's that's what magnetizes you to like, nope, this is
yes,
who I am. This is who I'm going to be. And so
yes.
I love that. I've never thought of that, the what you just said, tying it into the eulogy. That is
Oh, yeah.
so good.
Yeah. And then what I have people do is you look at current you and you look at aspirational eulogy you and you think, what are my bridge habits to get me from current me to aspirational eulogy me? And I have a whole system for doing this that's based on understanding your core values. And then you write this down. I'll explain it to you. First, I'll give you the general, and then I'll go into the specifics. And then you write down these core value based actions on a list that I call your to die list. Okay, and it's not a bucket list, and it's really like a to do what matters most list, because I believe that to do lists have a fatal flaw. You could do everything on your to do list, check it off every freaking day, and at the end of your life, feel like you wasted your life, because the goal of life is not to be busy and productive. The goal of life is to become your best possible self. And so that's where the to die list comes in. And a lot of the things on your to die list might be too like intangible to go on a to do list. But this is how you make sure that you're not just busy; you're doing things that really matter. And I could go into that more, but I'll pause there if you have any questions, because I know I'm so excited. I'm talking about very fast.
Yeah, Karen. Well, I'm wondering too, like, how does that differ in your opinion compared to the bucket list? Everyone, oh, make your
Or,
bucket list, and you got to accomplish these things before
no,
I die. But
even
I feel
those,
like people,
yeah.
a lot of people make bucket lists, and guess what, Karen? They never happen.
I know. Well, this is the thing. And I have a system that's proven by psychology to help make sure that it happens. Remember, I'm a behavioral change expert. So I kind of understand some of like that kind of secret, like, persuasion that gets you to do something. So this list is not based on anything you would find on a bucket list. There's no like, skydiving or trekking the Himalayas or anything like that. These are like actions you could do in your daily life. In fact, I want people
Mm.
to write it to die list daily. So what happens is I have a system where you look at your eulogy, and if you don't want to write the eulogy, the book still has so much in it, and I have a system to do it without the eulogy because I understand everybody's different, and that's cool. So what you do is every morning you wake up and you ask yourself this question: who do I need to become to get everything that I want in my life? And that's if you're looking at your eulogy. But you can also say, who do I need to become? And then think about what you want to be accomplishing in your more current life. And like, so who do I need to become to have the best marriage that I want? Who do I need to become to be, the best parent, or to stop fighting with my kid? Or who do I need to become to write that novel? Who do I need to become to, you fill in the blank, whatever it is. And then the answer is core values. And then what you do, so
Mm.
you say, I need to be more organized, disciplined, kind, whatever the core value is. And I help people to brainstorm them. But that's not just what you do. There's a whole research, a lot of research in psychology on something called identity based habits. So if you link your identity, the core value, with the habit, you're more likely to do it. So we're automatically doing it without knowing that we're doing it. If you think I am sloppy, you're going to do the habits of a sloppy person. If you think I'm organized, you're going to do the habits of an organized person. So you have to be intentional about your identity, because your identity is the puppet master of your habits, not the other way around. So if you write down on your to die list, I am loving, and so I make time for the people that I care about, or I am loving, or I am grateful, so I look for things to be grateful for. Or now I'll give you an example. The I am loving one. I have this wonderful friend, Danielle, who lives in Connecticut, and I live in Manhattan, New York City. And Danielle was having a birthday party in Connecticut. And I don't drive anymore. I'm like a stereotypical New Yorker where my driver's license expired and never got it renewed. So when Danielle invited me to her birthday party, even though I love Danielle and I value her and having like a deep friendship with her, my first thought was, oh, damn, how do I get myself from New York to Connecticut? This is going to be a little bit annoying.
Oh, I
It's
thought
almost
I
like,
thought you were going to actually think of what excuse am I going to make to get out of this?
there you go, right? So, but then because I am somebody who has a eulogy where meaningful relationships and friendships are important to me, and then I'm seen as somebody who's always there for my friends. So that's there, which is in the back of my mind. But I also looked at it because I identify with the core value of loving. I wrote down, I am loving. And so I find a way to get my tush to Connecticut to celebrate Danielle's birthday with her. And then what happens is, because I am connecting myself with the core value of loving, if I don't do it, then I create a little bit of cognitive dissonance because I want to view myself as a loving person. So it sort of motivates you to do the action that's connected to the core value. And there's all kinds of studies that when you have identity based habits, you're more likely to do it. So, and I describe this more inside of the book.
So good. So good. I was just curious too, thinking what I have kids. Have you been able to, has this been successful using, you always want your kids to be successful but it's not that, it's about setting them up for the best opportunities, right? For their life, whatever their success looks like, I could care less. But have you found that idea of using these identity based habits to create success for younger people as well?
Yeah.
Not,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you talk about core values with them, like, so if they're doing some behavior that you don't like, you might say to them, um, you're a kind person. Is that really what you want to do? You're a kind person. So remind them, reinforce the core values in them as you talk to them. And here's the thing about as you identify with a core value, at first you might link it to one specific habit that you want, but it winds up having a ripple effect into other areas. So I tell a story in the book, which was after my son was born. A couple years went by, and I was still referring to the weight that I had gained during my pregnancy as my pregnancy weight. But at this point, my son was 3 years old. It had nothing to do with pregnancy weight. It had to do with I eat too much crappy food weight. But I didn't like, I was kind of in slight denial about it. And one day I was on the phone with my publishing house, and we were talking about this book that we were publishing that had images in it, like photographs and illustrations. And when they sent me the first spec pages of it, I could see that the color was coming through a little on the flip side of the page. So I said, I think we need a thicker paper. Maybe if we make it toothier instead of shiny. And I'm talking to them about like paper details. And as I'm talking, I'm thinking, because I think about core values, and I thought, oh, I'm a very discerning person. I really care about details like this. Yet I'm eating crappy food. I'm eating cheddar cheese goldfish and pizza and macaroni and cheese. And I'm thinking a discerning person wouldn't be eating that. So I created an identity based statement. I am a discerning person, and so I eat healthy foods. And I identified already as discerning, so it really created that little bit of cognitive dissonance. So when I would see the food, I would think, would a discerning person eat that? I'm discerning. Oh, no. And it helped me to lose weight. And then it had this ripple effect. The more I was doing it, I started to like shop less, like be more careful about the things I was buying and like think about how I was using my time. So once you really start to identify with the core value, it can spread into other areas of your life as well.
I love that. Yeah, no, no. The reason I was thinking that, Karen, is because I was thinking probably not going to be talking about death with the kids as much, as but I mean, again, in Bhutan they do. I mean, again, it's like part of their that's just part of their society. They got like month-long funerals, so I guess it's just different.
I used video games to talk about my about death with my son because there's death in a lot of video games, and you can
Yeah,
talk to him about it. So that was one of my ways in to talk to him.
you've said too that death actually rewires the brain for more joy. Is that right?
Well, there's something called post traumatic growth. I write about that in one of the chapters. That after somebody dies, crisis pain can wake you up, and that's what happened with my when my dad died. That was what started this whole thing. After my dad died, I started thinking about things and wanting to like dust off my priorities and make sure. I realized I was working too hard, and I decided, I kept putting off having a family. And I was sad that my dad wasn't going to get to see me as a mom and, meet the child that I wanted to, like, I knew I wanted. So I started to be more intentional about starting a family. And I wound up 4 years later, to the exact day of his death, my son was born. My father passed away on August 27th. And then my son was born on August 27th, 4 years later, which I kind of love because it's sort of like a
Wow.
wink from my dad, like,
Yeah.
see you, Karen, good going, you know. But there's post traumatic growth that after somebody does pass, it can wake us up and inspire us to want to do better in our lives. But that has to also be an intentional choice. It doesn't just automatically kick in. So, and my dad's death got me thinking about so many things.
Yeah.
I have a whole chapter about that in the book, which I can share with you if you want while I'm here.
Yeah, don't die. Don't die. This is we need this. We need this
Okay.
information.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when my dad passed, he'd been in the hospital for a little bit, and I was there first in the morning, and my mother came in afterwards, and she said, "Karen, I found this envelope in Dad's bureau drawer, and it's something you mailed him in college." And I looked at him like, "Oh my God!" It's like it said like the 1980s, because
Wow.
I'm old. But anyway, um, but that's okay. I'm cool with it. I even write about this in the book about embracing aging and all of that.
Well, this
But
is so key though, because I think, and I was telling you my story with my mom too, with her recently getting sick.
yeah,
It's brought up some things for me, and I'm 43, and with young kids, and I think, man, well, what if that happened to me, or what? It made me really start to ask, what am I doing right now
mm,
so that I don't end up that way. And like, there's just like little things that I've like ignored in my own health. And I'm thinking, maybe I should I mean, I'm pretty healthy, but there's things I've ignored. And I'm like, I really need to buckle down on this. And I think
Yeah.
that was kind of a reality check for me too. But even your point about entrepreneurs and everybody's like, we're so driven for success. It's hard to
Mm,
smell the roses, I think. And it's hard to be, yeah, 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 I'll be present later. Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, I'll have kids later. And
Right.
so what's that?
I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think, but so finding that time to be really mindful and present, because and especially we're living in a world with phones and everything, and I'm really curious to hear your take on that in a little bit, because that is the ultimate time sucker, and I'm guilty of it too. And like, I run a business off of having social media, and I'm sure you use social media to leverage your platform as well, right? So it's like, how do we find this, but we can still be living that to die for life,
Yeah.
not to, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, seeing people that you love getting ill and, it is a wake up call to take care of your health. And the more that you really get real about death being a, a reality, the better you take care of your health, because we live as if we have like 700 bonus years stored in like a drawer somewhere, and
Right.
it's not so. So, one of my tools I think you'll like, which actually helps me with my health also, is a couple of years ago, I counted out. This, I know this is going to sound a little bit weird at first, but this is so darn effective. I counted out how many months I have left to live if I live to 100. So I told myself 100. I'm optimistic because even though my dad passed away early, my mom is 93 and still a little spitfire. And I take good care of my health. So I decided I'm okay. I will think of myself as living to 100. And so I did this a couple of years ago, and I think I realized that I only had like 465 months left to live,
Wow.
which sounds so little
Sounds
when you hear
minuscule.
that,
Yeah.
right? So, and actually, you want to hear something that's even more like wakes you up? I only have 26 summers left.
Oh, that's terrible to think about.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm 64. And if I live to 100, I have 26 summers. Now, when you hear those numbers, numbers don't lie. You're like, I am making the summer count. 26 summers. It's
Man,
not just like,
yeah.
oh, I have infinite summers, right? So I bought whatever it was. I think it was 400. I forgot when I did this, what year it was. And then I bought the marbles and I put them in a jar. And then I bought a second jar that was an empty jar, but didn't stay empty for long because I put the two jars next to each other. And then every month I would pull out a marble, hold it up, look at it, and go, this is like a piece of my life. This marble, it's like this little tiny piece of my life. And then I thought I would do it in the mornings. How did I spend on the first of the month? How did I spend that last month? And I would look
Mm,
at it and then I would journal about it. Well, the first month I did this, I thought, oh man, I really did not make the most of that month, that little piece of more. But then I thought, okay, next month, it made me like accountable. Next month, I'm going to be ready for you, Marble. And it even got me thinking, well, what do I want to accomplish in next month? Like it made me more proactive and again, intentional and mindful about this. Because I didn't want to disappoint myself when I did this mortality marble ritual, on the first of the next month. So I would start to get excited even about like what I want that next month to be about, what I want to accomplish or what I want to do. And one month, oh my God, this was like kind of funny. I had promised my 93-year-old Spitfire mom that I was going to go and visit her. And she lives a bunch of hours away. And again, I don't drive. So this is like. So I was like, okay, mom, I'm going to see you next month. Like it was for my marble. And also because I am a loving person. And so I see my 93-year-old mother regularly. So that month, the first time the visit was scheduled, like I think my son got sick. And so I said, Mom, I'm going to have to reschedule. So then we picked the next week or whatever. And then she got sick. So now we're nearing the end of the month, and I'd promised I was going to see her. Um, the night before I was going to leave, the day before the night that I was going to leave, I started to feel a toothache, and it turned out I had cracked my tooth. So I had to go into the dentist, and he had to do this whole surgery thing. And I was like on drugs and like gauze and everything. I was like in so much pain. I'm like, Mom, I just had dental surgery, but I'm gonna come in tomorrow. And she's like, Oh, you can reschedule it. I want you coming in. And you, no, I promised I was seeing you this month. Like I put it down that it was for the month. And I'm telling you, that made me make sure that I didn't keep putting it off. And that's what the marble jar does. And every time I keep my jars in the kitchen, and every time I walk into the kitchen, I think about, oh, that's a limited amount of months. I better make sure. I hope I reach 100 years. And then I eat healthier because I look at the marble jars in my kitchen, and it helps me not to like pig out on ice cream or whatever.
That's so good because Karen, I'm telling you right now, you're the first person I've heard actually create a practical visual, whether through journaling, whether through the mortality marbles, which by the way, I think you should like create mortality. I think people should buy the mortality marble game,
I
and
might.
it,
I
it,
wrote
it
about it on Substack, and I got a really positive, strong response. Oh, I'm going to get my marbles. I'm going to get my Everybody was going wild for this. So,
yeah,
yeah.
because I mean, I think that's one of the biggest shift is trying to get people to reorient and reprioritize, like you said, because you're always going to be chasing success, and whether that and it's writing more books and trying to influence people because you want to make a difference and an impact on the world, know that you matter, that you did something, but also keeping in the back of your mind what's really most important and having that visual representation and practice that you do every day, every month. That I love. That is the first. I haven't heard anybody say anything like that. I'm gonna get my mortality marbles, just so you
Oh,
know.
I
So
want to see.
you should definitely create this. I don't know how you would come up with it. You could maybe you could have like a base. I know there's a great book out there I read called the Experiential Billionaire, and the whole idea behind this book was that we're rich on experiences, not money and things like kind of like what we're
Yes.
talking about, right? And in
Mhm.
the book, they actually put, I think the research suggests that the average American lives to 76.
Ah,
So they had a chart with like 76 boxes for
mm.
years, and every year you check it off so you can kind of see, right, that mortality. So maybe you could create like a mortality marble, like 76 for the average American, and then for us, and then if you're going to live longer than that, you can buy additional marbles if you think.
make, get a bonus pack. Yeah.
Yeah, the bonus pack with, maybe there's like some positive things written down there or something to keep you going. But I think, and just so you know, the with the latest research in DNA, at least it suggests that our telomeres actually are built to last 120 years. So there's people that really want to go for the gusto, can
Mm.
go for that 120, I say.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to ask, you know, I mean, we talked about kids, right? We talked about kids. We talked about death, and actually, how do you make it in a more realistic thing? I love what you talked about values, though, because for kids that makes a lot of sense. Um, what have you seen? I guess just how, other than yourself as your own N of one experiment, but what have you seen also by using? I'm just the last thing I wanted to ask you regarding mortality. How have you seen it impact others' motivation or their happiness
Oh,
or their ability to reprioritize?
I have seen people start new careers, go out and find love. I have a chapter in my book called "It's Never Too Late to Rejigger Your Life," and how to make sure that as you age, not just getting older or getting bolder, And I have 7 core values that I recommend. What I did was I looked at the top regrets of the dying that death doulas say that people have.
I wanted to ask you this. You beat
Yeah.
me to it. Yes, thank you for asking this. I
Oh,
mean, bringing this
yeah.
up.
And I reverse engineered them.
This
And
is now this is based on, I think it's her name's Bonnie. She's a nurse that used to, is that what you're referring to?
yeah,
Where
but I
the
didn't just use her. I used like research because she wrote that book a while ago.
it's older, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So I looked at all the research because a lot of death doulas are reporting it. And I interviewed somebody here in New York about it. So I got all of the regrets of the dying. And then I reverse engineered it and I thought, which core values will help me make sure that I don't? Remember how I have that thing like, who do I need to become? to blah, 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 blah. So who do I need to become to avoid this regret? So some of the top regrets are, I wish I hadn't worked so hard is right up there.
Yep.
I wish I allowed myself to be happier. I wish I hadn't lost touch with friends. I wish that I had been more true to myself. I wish that I had done something more to be of service.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of different ones in there. So I found that there are 7 core values in particular that if you put these, you embrace these, it's like slathering your life in regret reproof, like sealant, like it keeps the regret out. So these are, um, they go in alphabetical order. A, and now think about yourself as I do this and see how you're doing with these. I'm sure I'm sure you got all 7 out of 7 actually. A is authentic because you need to be true to yourself, and express the true you. B is brave, and that one solves a lot because people that stick to their comfort zones, and pretty much when you're on your deathbed, you're going to be remembering the things that you did that were a little bit gutsy and ballsy and all of that. C is curious, and that one's there because Aristotle said if you want to live your best life, you have to learn lessons that help you to grow into your best possible self. So you have to be curious when things go wrong, to become adaptable. Well, why did that happen? What can I learn? Why does this pattern keep happening? What can, you need to be curious about your life. And also, curiosity creates awe and wonder, which leads to more happiness too. D is discerning. That one went right on there because that one helped me so much. Plus, also, we are so busy. You have to be discerning to figure out which are the time wasters, which are the like time leaks and happiness leaks in your life that you have to, start to cut out the crap and clutter in your life. So D is discerning. E is empathic love. And I put the E in front of it because I wanted to go in alphabetical order, but also because when I thought about just listing it as love, I thought people are going to maybe assume that I just mean like romantic love. And also, they might confuse it with like lust and love, like chemistry. And I really wanted to be about empathic love, which is active listening, really trying to understand and connect and give of your heart. So I felt like empathic love was even a better descriptor. And meaningful relationships are very important for living a well lived life. When you're on your deathbed, that's what you're going to be thinking about a lot.
Yeah.
And then F is fun. Fun is a core value. And it might not
Mm.
be a top thing that you would think about it, but when I told you that I was in beast mode, or that a top regret of the dying is I wish I hadn't worked so hard. So, good antidote to that is to make sure you schedule fun, you intentionally choose fun, you have a playful outlook for life. And then G is grateful.
Mm.
And that's important because even though I'm recommending people try to create those bridge habits to become aspirational eulogy you still should be grateful for what you have now. And that puts you in the mindset to feel motivated and inspired and joyful each day.
Those are so good. I can tell you already the one that I have to work on is fun.
Ah,
Yeah, the other ones, there's probably a couple other ones too, but most of them, I think I do pretty well in. But the fun part, that's something I could definitely work on because I'm so driven that
mhm.
sometimes I miss again to kind of the cliche go and smell the roses and just be in the moment and really like you said be intentional about planning that fun. I think too
Yes.
that's key as well. We get so busy with our kids and sports and all their activities and everything. It's just like work 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 and then you don't actually have then it's like oh my god the weekend's here, what are we going to do? You just I don't know, just
Yeah.
it's not as intentional, I guess I would say.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something about fun that might surprise you. I actually gave a TED talk called Fun is a High Performance Fuel. And the more you take time for fun, the more productive you are. It actually, I think of fun as meditation on steroids. It does something to your
Mm.
brain that makes you sharper. They did a study where they gave some people a sad movie to watch and some people a fun movie to watch. And then they gave them like some kind of like puzzle to do. And the people that took time for the fun thing were better able to solve the puzzle. So it makes you
It
smarter. So
makes
it's actually better for your career to take time for fun.
I'll let my kids know. They'll be really happy to hear that. I wanted to ask you, when you went through all this research for your book, but also just living and breathing it, did it change any of your perspective of some of the things you wrote about happiness in the past in your older books, or did it just solidify some of the things you already knew?
It solidified it. Um, and I think, well, mortality awareness in general makes you say, because you can know things, but do you actually do it? You know what I mean? So it's one thing to intellectually say, oh, yes, I should meditate, or oh, yes, I should eat healthier. But it's another thing, again, to have that fire under your tush to do it. And the identity based habits have been life changing for me. So
Yeah.
I really recommend those.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If if I wanted to ask you just a couple more questions and we'll wrap things up, but um talk to me about cell phones, because there's a lot of talk out there. Jonathan hates work and the anxious generation. I'm sure, yeah, you're not, you know about that. But they're I don't know, they're necessary at some point, but man, I do see the harms that they're doing for we saw the charts just in depression, anxiety, all that thing when the iPhone camera, it was invented, I think, in 2012, and you just see it, the entire globe. It wasn't just like one area. And now and the dopamine that it creates, the dopamine feedback loops. What have you been implementing in your own life to kind of mitigate that, knowing that it's really taking us away from presence and that mortality? I think that living in the moment.
I have a whole chapter about this in my book. Um, because, as you know, is for authentic. That's one of my top core values. And what does that have to do with cell phones? I will tell you. I don't think we have enough time for contemplation in our lives, and to take moments to pause and to really let ideas and insights come into our lives is so important. And we fill up every little minute with like something has to be on the cell phone. If you have a free moment, even if you're waiting for your coffee at Starbucks, you're not just letting your mind wander. And we need that mind wandering time to get those little hits of insight. And interesting, my favorite philosopher, Aristotle, he said the most important knowledge is not something that you get in a book or at school, which I thought was interesting because he was considered one of the great intellectual minds of his era. And he said the most important knowledge is insight, because insight is the only knowledge that leads to growth. And he talks a lot about the reason why we're here is for the education of our soul. And he said that if we don't take time for contemplation, then we don't grow and we don't become our best selves. So, for this reason, the cell phones are, I think we make a choice between cell phone and soul phone.
Mm.
Like our soul phone rings and we don't pick up, and like we're not listening to it. So we have to spend less time on our cell phone and more time on our soul phone, or just listening to our core selves. Uh, we Journaling is important. Going for walks is important. All of that is so important to live a meaningful life, and that's where also the sea of curiosity comes in. To wonder, what am I really thinking? What do I need to change? Okay, am I happy in my marriage? What do I need? Oh my God, you have to wait for those oh my God moments, and they're not going to come if you're filling up your brain with cell phone all the time.
Yeah, that's so key. What do you do anything personally, like just set up blocks or barriers, and just like when it's this time at night, I put the phone away and I'm just
I put
present
the
with the
phone
fam.
away. I
Yeah,
don't allow it in my bedroom. Yeah.
yeah,
And then different things. I challenge myself. Like if I'm waiting for coffee, that one's so easy.
yeah.
Like it's 6 minutes. Why do I have to be on my phone? You know?
It goes back to discernment too, and your core values,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
definitely.
you're
Definitely.
choosing in that moment, like, how do I want to show up right now? Is that who I really say I am to be? Yeah, I love that. A couple more questions, and we'll wrap things up, Sarah or Karen. I wanted to ask you, if knowing everything now that you know, what if you had like 30 days to live? Would you change anything that you've already been doing, or is there anything that you'd pivot, or you think you would just pretty much keep doing what you've been doing?
That's a great question. I want you to know you're the first interviewer who asked me that question, and it's such a good one. And I'm even like hearing you ask me now. I'm surprised nobody. I'm surprised I didn't even ask me that. So I'm going to give you my top of mind thought. I don't think that before when you asked me about the bucket list, and I said a to die list is different than a bucket list. I think the most meaningful things in our lives are not really like the expensive or the like completely crazy things like, travel, go to a safari. I mean, that would be wonderful. But I really think it's as simple as strong, meaningful relationships, strong, meaningful experiences, usually with the meaningful relationship people, and being of service, giving back, doing something, putting your was here mark on the planet, feeling like you were here for a reason and figuring out what that reason is, turning your pain into purpose, helping other people with something you struggled on. So if I only had 30 days left to live, I would probably just amp up all of the people in my life that I love, spend as much time as possible with them. I'd probably, this might surprise you, do a couple more podcasts, get my message out there. Because I really, I think of this book as my legacy project. And I
Yeah.
talk a lot about legacy projects in the book. And legacy projects don't even have to be big. You can have ripples that you leave behind what you want to be remembered for. And guess what they're based on? Your core values. Your core values. So I would just turn those volume up to 12 instead of where I'm kind of maybe at 9.
Yeah. I love that. No, and this has been so good. It's some of the ideas that I've maybe thought of or contemplated, but then never thought of, like, how could I actually put this into a real good practice? Like this legacy project, like you said, you've really crafted it and it's so well done. And I'm big on paradigms, and your paradigms, your reality, and you have given me a lot to shift today. So I really appreciate it. Wanted to just kind of wrap things up, but I mean, the book's coming out right here pretty soon, but any other exciting projects that you can tell us about? Maybe Mortality Marbles
Oh, sure.
or
Well,
what else that
thinking about doing the marble thing as a product because I'm like an entrepreneur as well as an author,
yeah.
so that does intrigue me. But I actually have something called Legacy Lab where I help people figure out what their legacies are. And then I also have something called Closure Class because why wait? A lot of people when they hear I wrote a book about death, it's called You're to Die for Life, and they think, oh, she's a death doula. But I'm not an end of life death doula. I'm a middle of life death doula. Like while you still have runway.
that's when people actually need you most.
That's when they need me most, right? So Closure Class is to make sure that you get clear on your resentments and bitternesses and with your life story. Understand your life story and why you were here. I have a lot of things that I do with that I write about in the book, like chronological mapping and life reviews. So Closure Class, I help people with that. And then I do coaching with people based on the tools in You're to Die for Life as well.
Yeah. And can you talk about Legacy Lab just briefly? Like, what does that look like? Is that like an 8 week like course where people like you work with them and coach them one on one, or like, or is that a group kind of model? Like, what does
It's
that look
well,
like?
right now I'm doing it one on one because that's really how you make sure. I don't want people to feel at this point, I don't want people to feel self-conscious talking amongst other people. And what's interesting is I've been getting a lot of older people. I'm 64, but I have a 78-year-old who's doing Legacy Lab with me.
That's inspiring.
Yeah. And a 70-year-old who's doing Legacy Lab with me. And then I helped an 84-year-old woman uh, get her, she had a children's book idea. She was an illustrator. And I helped her create a website and get her book out there. And, so I don't only work with older people, but that excites me that it's, again, never too late to rejigger your life. And I help people first drill down and figure out what is their legacy. And it could just be what you want to be remembered for as far as your core values. And I write about that in the book. I call them ripples, like the ripples that you want to leave behind.
Yeah.
So,
So cool. You are a force and you're doing so much good in the world. Thank you for your work. Karen, where can people find you, connect with you, either social media, obviously your website, but where, and go out and get the book, of course, but where's a good place to connect if someone does want to reach out?
well, sure. Well, my book is called "You're to Die for Life," and so I have a website just dedicated to that called "You're to Die for Life.com." So you can find out a lot about the book and other things there. And then my last name is Salmansohn, and everybody mangles it and says Salmonson, and I'm always going, not salmon, not salmon. So I turned that into my website, notsalmon.com, and Instagram is not salmon, and Facebook is not salmon. Even my Substack, it's substack.com/not salmon, but I call myself a stand-up philosopher. That's the name of my Substack publication, because I like to merge humor with philosophical inquiry. So
You do it so well. I appreciate you and all the work that you're doing. Karen Salmansohn, go get the book. You're to Die for Life. Can't wait. And I can't wait to read it. So thank you so much for being on the show.
well,
Look forward
thank
to
you.
connecting in the future.
Thank you.